Namaste friends, welcome to Dozume Civil Engineering course. Subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for regular video updates. So without wasting time, let's move to the class. Question number 1 on your screen. For developing thinly populated areas, the correct choice of gauge is broad gauge, meter gauge, narrow gauge, any of the above. If you know the answer, comment it with the specific question number. So what gauge distance is? At first we have to understand this. Gauge distance is the parallel distance between two rails. Gauge distance is the parallel distance between two rails. Okay, and depending upon this distance, there are 4 kinds of rails. Number 1, broad gauge, meter gauge, standard gauge, and the last one is narrow gauge. Broad gauge means which parallel distance is 1676 millimeter, that will be termed as broad gauge. Which gauge distance have 1435 millimeter of gauge distance, that will be termed as standard gauge. Which gauge distance have 10675 millimeter, 1067 millimeter, then it will be termed as meter gauge. And which gauge distance have 762 millimeter, then it will be termed as narrow gauge. Depending upon the population of that area and the topography of the area, the gauge distance we will choose. For the heavily populated area and for the plain land area, we will go for the broad gauge. For lightly populated area, we will go for the meter gauge or standard gauge, and for the thinly populated area and for the hilly region, we will go for the narrow gauge. So option C will be the correct answer, narrow gauge. Question number 2. 52 kilogram rails are mostly used in broad gauge, meter gauge, narrow gauge, both A and B. Look, if you know the answer, then comment it with the specific question number. Depending upon the gauge distance, the load change. For the broad gauge, it is capable for resisting the heavy load. For the narrow gauge, it is capable for bearing with the light load. So the weight of the rail also vary. For the case of narrow gauge, the 1 meter rail section is weight up to 25 kg. For the meter gauge, it will vary from 25 to 35 kg, and for the broad gauge, the rail section of 1 meter rail section will weight up to 35 to 55 kg. So you have to remember this. For the narrow gauge, the weight will be up to 25 kg. For the meter gauge, the weight will up to 25 to 35 kg, and for the broad gauge, the weight will up to 35 to 55 kg. Move to the next question. Question number 3. The purpose of providing fillet in a rail section is to increase the lateral strength, increase the vertical stiffness, avoid the stress concentration. Option D, reduce the wear. So what is fillet? We have to understand this. Fillet, the words come from fill. Fill means filling some extra material. For what? For resist the extra concentrated stress. What is concentrated stress? For some purpose, for some cause like angular angle, for the punch hole, or for the minor cracks on the some area of a section, the stress concentrated, the stress increased or raised. For counteract that stress, we have to provide some extra filling material to the particular section. So the fillet is used for avoid the stress concentration. Option C will be the correct answer. Question number 4. Due to battering action of wheel over the end of rails, the rails get bent down and are deflected at ends. These rails are called option A, rearing rails, option B, hogged rail, option C, corrugated rails, option D, buckled rails. So what is battering action? Battering action means the impact on the same area again and again is known as battering action or battering impact. So for the battering impact, the slipper get bent down where it have not enough ballast material or enough support. So this kind of rail will be termed as hogged rail, and dehogging machine we will use for straightening the rails. So option B will be the correct answer. Question number 5. The maximum degree of curvature for meter gauge is limited to 10 degree, 16 degree, 30 degree or 40 degree. Look, the wider the gauge will, the maximum curvature will decrease. So maximum curvature limit will increase for the shorter gauge distance. For the broader gauge, the maximum curvature limit is 10 degree. For the meter gauge, the maximum curvature limit is 16 degree, and for the narrow gauge, the maximum curvature limit is 40 degree. Note it down, the important points. It will help you in future. So for the broader gauge, the maximum permissible limit is 10 degree. For the meter gauge, the maximum permissible limit is 16 degree, and for the narrow gauge, the maximum permissible limit is 40 degree. Okay. Question number 6. The total gap on both sides between the inside edge of wheel flange and gauge face of the rail is kept as 10 mm, 13 mm, 16 mm or 19 mm. The total gap on both sides, the inside of wheel flange and gauge face. So what is wheel flange? Wheel flange is the extra portion of the wheel provide for the stability of the track. Okay, so extra portion, extra edge of the wheel is known as wheel flange, provide for the stability in track. And the distance between the gauge face, consider my hand is a rail and the train's wheel is moving over this. So the distance, the wheel flange and the gauge face distance, total we will take 19 mm, both the side. The total gauge distance we will consider, the gauge face and the wheel flange distance we will consider 19 mm. So option D will be the correct answer. Question number 7. The nominal size of ballast used for points and crossing is 25 mm, 40 mm, 50 mm and 10 mm. If you know the answer, pause the video and comment it with the specific question number. So for the points and crossing, we will choose the shorter size of ballast material as for easily movement of the tongue rail. If you provide the larger size, it will not helpful for the moving of the tongue rail which connect the both the stroke rails. Okay, so we will go for the shorter size. What the size will be? The maximum size will be 25.4 mm for the points and crossing area of the rail. Okay, maximum size will be the 25 mm. Basically the exact value is 25.4, but we will go for the 25 mm. And for the steel sleeper, for the normal stock rail section, for the steel sleeper we will go for the 38 mm size of ballast material, and for the concrete sleeper we will go for the 51 mm size. Okay, so main important point here is 3. Number 1 is points and crossing. In the points of crossing we will go for the size of 25 mm of ballast material size. For the concrete sleeper we will go for the 51 mm of ballast material size, and for the steel sleeper we will go for the 38 mm of ballast material size. So option A will be the correct answer. The nominal size of ballast material points and crossing will be 25 mm. Question number 8. The shape of transition curve used by cubic parabola, option B spiral, option C sine curve, option D lemniscate. Basically all over the world maximum transition curve is choose cubic parabola. For the African region, for the UK and USA region also we will go for the cubic parabola shape of transition curve. So what basically transition curve is? Transition curve is that kind of curve which connect to the stock straight line track to the curve. It's basically act like the agent which connect the curving portion to the straight portion and work like a curving area to provide a perfect super elevation and counteracting the stability of the speed. So we will go for the transition curve shapes cubic parabola. So option A will be the correct answer. Question number 9. Switch angle is the angle between the gauge face of the stock rail and tongue rail. Option B, the outer face of the stock rail and tongue rail. Option C, the gauge face of the stock rail and the outer face of tongue rail. Option D, the outer face of the stock rail and the gauge face of the tongue rail. So what is stock rail and what is tongue rail? We have already discussed. So stock rail means the actual rail track from which the train will move to another track. The another track is also stock rail. So basically stock rail is the main rail track over which the train will move, and tongue rail is the connecting rail used for diverging the train to one stock rail to another stock rail. It's working like a agent track, you can say. Okay, so this is stock rail and tongue rail, and the angle between the gauge face, gauge face means over which the trains move. The gauge face angle between the both of the two rail is known as the switching angle. Okay. Question number 10. The heel divergence is always less than the flangeway clearance. Option B, equal to flangeway clearance. Option C, always greater than the flangeway clearance. Option D, sometimes greater than the flangeway clearance. Comment it What is flange clearance? If you know the answer, comment it. What is flange clearance? Actually, the option C will be the correct answer, always greater than the flange clearance. Comment it, the flange clearance, what is flange clearance definition, and I will discuss it on depth in the next class. Question number 11. A treadle bar is used for option A, interlocking points and signal, option B, setting points and crossing, option C, setting marshalling and yard and signal, option D, track maintenance. So what is treadle bar? If you know the answer, comment it with the specific question number. Basically, treadle bar is kind of a mechanical and electronics combination machine which have a sensor also, which sense the trains completely passed or not. Basically, it locks the switching function of the track. When the treadle bar active, you cannot manually switch the crossing points. Basically, it's locked the total mechanism, and it ensure that all the bogies just passed over the track, then it will unlock the function. So treadle bar is used for interlocking the points and signal. Okay. Question number 12. A platform surrounded by rail lines from all the four sides is called dock platform, passenger platform, island platform, all of the above. Basically, you know the answer, comment it with the specific question number. Basically, the answer will be option C, island platform. Basically, island, what is island? Island is that kind of land, which is surrounded by water. So here is also the will be same. Island platform means it will surrounded by rail line. Okay. Question number 13. For holding a rail in position, no chairs are used for bull-headed rail, flat-footed rail, double-headed rail, both A and B. So depending upon the cross section and the amount of material, there are three kinds of rail. One is bull-headed, another is double-headed, and the third one is flat-footed. Bull-headed means if the rail's head is much larger than the footer section, then it will be termed as bull-headed. If the footer section is much larger than the head, then it will be termed as flat-footed. And both the header and footer is the same, then it will be termed as double-headed. And for the bull-headed and for the double-headed, for the stability purpose in the track, we will use chair. But in the case of flat-footed only, we will go for the spikes, as it has a flat foot, has the larger area than the head, it is already stable in the track. For the holding purpose only, we will go for the spike. So answer B will be the flat-footed. No chair are used flat-footed in the flat-footed rails, only spikes is used in the flat-footed rail. Question number 14. The rails are manufactured by option A, duplex process, open hearth process, both A and B, neither A and B. Okay, so what is duplex process? If you know the answer, comment it. Duplex process, in the duplex process there are two processes. Number one is the Bessemer process and the second one is open hearth process. So duplex process consisting of Bessemer process and the open hearth process, and open hearth process is basically more popular than the duplex one. Basically the rail section are manufactured by both the process. So option C will be the correct answer, both A and B. Question number 15. Overall depth of dog spikes is 115.6 mm, 120.6 mm, 121.6 mm, 184.3 mm. What the overall depth? Basically, most important spikes there are two. Number one, dog spikes, and the second one is screw spike. If you know the answer, comment it. The dog spikes overall depth is 120.6 mm, and for the screw spikes the overall depth is 165 mm. For the screwing section it is generally 130 mm, and for the header section it is 30 mm. For the screwing section it is 135 mm, and for the header section it is 30 mm. Overall depth is 165 mm. Okay. Question number 16. The tread of wheels is provided an outward slope is 1 in 15, 1 in 20, 1 in 25, 1 in 30. If you look to the wheels of the train, you can see that it has a slope. It is not flat. It has a slope. The slope of about 1 in 20 for the better stability over the track. So option B will be the correct answer. Question number 17. The cornering of wheels Option A, avoid excessive wear of inner face of rail. Option B, prevent lateral movement of wheels. Option C, provide smooth running of trains. Option D, all of the above. So what is coning of wheel? Coning of wheels mean an extra sloping to the innerward for better stability and to avoid lateral movement. It avoids the lateral movement of the train, and the amount of slope is 1 in 20. So option D will be the correct answer. It ensures all of the options, all of the criteria. Question number 18. Minimum packing space provided between two sleeper is between 25 to 30 centimeter, 30 to 35 centimeter, 40 to 45 centimeter, 45 to 50 centimeter. So minimum packing space between two sleeper is between minimum packing space for packed the ballast material between two sleeper is 30 centimeter to 35 centimeter generally. Okay, so option B will be the correct answer. Question number 19. Types of switch rails generally adapted for modern track is curved switch, bent switch, straight switch, none of this. What kind of switch basically adopted in modern track? Basically modern track, if you know the answer, comment it. Basically in modern days we will go for the number 1 option, option A, curved switch. We will use curved switch. Question number 20. The place where a railway line and a road cross each other at the same level is known as road junction, level crossing, railway junction, crossover. If you know the answer, comment it. If the railway line and the road intersect each other at the same level, then it will be termed as level crossing. And one most important thing is, what is railway junction? If you know, comment it. What the railway junction is? Railway junction basically is that kind of platform area, in that kind of holding station is that station which have more than 3 diverging or converging or running line of tracks. That kind of station will be termed as railway junction. So I hope you have learned a lot of things today. Subscribe Dozumi English and press the bell icon for regular video updates, and for the important MCQ question, follow us on Instagram. Link is in the description below. Okay, thank you. Stay happy, stay safe. Namaste.